Okay, I think we can get started. I'm sure people will be joining us as we go along. Good morning, good day, everybody. My name is Binami Carroll. I am with RTI International, and I will be your host for today's two-part panel on effectiveness of coaching as a teacher professional development strategy in low-income countries. So the way the panel is organized, we had a lot of submissions from lots of different implementers, which we were really excited about. We couldn't fit everything on one panel, so we will have two. The first panel has 4 papers, and the second panel has 3 papers. And we will take a break, so we're not going to keep everyone here for the full 4 hours. We'll take a break for about 15 minutes between panel 1 and 2 so people can, go refresh themselves as needed. Um, we're very excited for this panel. I think we have a range of implementers who will be talking to us about the ways in which they do professional development and the effect, what they're learning about that and the effect on teacher learning and also student learning. We have papers that cover a variety of countries from Afghanistan to Nigeria to Malawi, Tanzania. So we have a good spread of countries. We have different implementers, Creative Associates, IRC, RTI, FHI 360. So I'm looking forward to a very diverse, broad, and interesting conversation. I ask that all the panelists, all of those who will be presenting in the first panel, you know who you are, if you can turn your video on, and then the others, if everybody else can just keep their video off, that would be great. So please feel free to turn your videos on now. If you have questions, please put your questions in the chat, and I will try to manage that. So we'll take questions at the end of the first panel, take a break, go to the second panel, and then we'll have a discussion at the very end who will try to pull everything together. So if we are ready, presenters will introduce yourselves and you will introduce your topic. And we will start with Toby Mbaya, who will be presenting on behalf of Creative Associates. So Toby, feel free to share your screen.
Okay.
Go ahead, Toby.
Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen. If you can put it on slideshow mode. Toby, the sound isn't very, we can't hear you very well. No, it's quite, the connection doesn't seem to be great. So everyone, we're connecting from all over the place, so please bear with us. Um, Toby, your connection doesn't seem to be great right now. We can't really hear you. Isaac, are you there? I think there's a second person from Creative.
Maybe if they turn off their videos, it might work little bit. We can hear them
Okay.
easily.
Toby, maybe we can do that. Can you turn your video off? And maybe we can all turn our videos off unless, except for the person speaking. Let's see if that helps. If not, we might need to go to the next presenter while Toby is getting herself set up.
This is Susan from
Yes.
Creative. I'm
Hi,
wondering
Susan.
if someone from Home Office, Jen, you work on Nigeria, can you step in and support?
I would rather have another panelist go and not step in to take Toby's words out of her mouth. If we could have maybe
Right.
switch up panels and have someone else go and then try Toby. Maybe
Sure.
go.
If you can just work with her in the background and let me know when she's ready to come on.
I think it may be just the connection. We've been having trouble with the Nigerian internet connection recently. So
Oh dear.
I'll,
Okay. And we tested this on Friday and it was fine.
yeah, it's hit or miss.
All right. Okay. Well, let's move on to Arfan, if you're ready.
Yes, let me just share my screen and we can have this one. Just 1 second for sharing the screen, please.
Sure.
Please do let me know when the screen is visible at your end.
Yes, we can see your screen now. If you can go on slideshow mode. Excellent.
And, okay. Zulfikar sir, could you please start and so you can present and then move on?
Thank you, Irfan Sahab. I hope everyone can hear me properly.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Irfan Sahab, for sharing your screen and supporting us in this presentation. Colleagues, in this presentation, we are basically three presenters. I am Zulfikar Ali from Pakistan Reading Project, and one of my colleagues, Hira Siddiqui, and another colleague, Irfan Majid, will be contributing in this presentation. This presentation is basically help us to know about some preliminary findings that a study has been conducted in schools supported by USAID funded Pakistan Reading Project. And the core objective of this study was to explore cost effectiveness of the different ingredients of professional development model that has been implemented in Pakistan under USAID funded reading project. Next, please. In this slide, you people can see the context where Pakistan Reading Project is basically working. Pakistan is the sixth most populous country, and with 19.3 million children enrolled in primary schools, and out of those, 8.7 million grade 1 and 2 students are enrolled. MSI did an AGRA baseline in 2013, and from there it was understood that it was revealed that 31.3% grade 2 graduates are still zero scorer in oral reading fluency. Similarly, only 14.6% students could meet performance standard, oral reading performance standard at national level. So to cope with this critical reading situation, USAID funded Pakistan Reading Project worked in Pakistan and still working till June 2020. And so far it has covered 69 districts across the country. And you can see from this map that major part of the country is green. So we worked across From this slide, you can see the target versus achievement. The target set for this project was 1.3 million students, and so far we have reached 1.5 million. And similarly, the other targets, if you can see, are mostly achieved, mostly 100% are achieved, or even in some cases we have achieved more than our associated target. And out of these targets, 40% are female.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. At this slide, you can see that what basically Pakistan Reading Project envisioned and implemented in the field. There were 4 major areas where Pakistan Reading Project supported and worked together with the government of Pakistan to increase student reading achievement and also to improve student teacher instruction practices. The first one was teacher professional development and support for in-service teachers and for pre-service teachers. Similarly, the other important thing was provision of quality reading material, contextualized quality reading material in Urdu and Sindhi and also in Pashto. In addition to that, the project also worked with the government of Pakistan to help them implement policy reforms that promote reading and sustained reading in the country. Similarly, there was another aspect of the project, although it was small, but we did work on the community engagement to help parents and communities contribute towards the improvement of reading for their children in schools and at their homes. So this was the whole basic theory where we worked with the government of Pakistan. Next slide, please. In this specific slide, we will be talking more about the only one ingredient that basically worked in the country to improve the reading of children in grade 1 and 2. This was a very kind of robust professional development model that Pakistan Reading Project implemented in the country. It has 3 major ingredients, and we will be talking more about these ingredients in our research finding. So I will be taking some time to discuss these 3 components, 3 ingredients that implemented in the country. First of all, this model from the first day when we started intervention in any district, the teacher of those districts were provided 5-day face-to-face training. And in that specific face-to-face training, they were oriented about the scope of work of the project, implementation strategy of the project, and also they were introduced with the grade 1 material that were provided to them. So in the second year, again, a 3-day session was conducted for the same teacher, and they were provided orientation specifically for the grade 2 material. So in the face-to-face training, we usually provided them mostly support to understand the material and then how to implement that material inside the classroom. And after that face-to-face training, there was another component which was basically monthly meetings. We call it them here teacher inquiry group meetings. So in teacher inquiry group meetings, what teachers have learned in the face-to-face training, they were given more practice and understanding to learn more about components of reading, their linkage with the reading learning material that was provided to them, and also to practice that specific material inside the TAGs, and also to reflect upon what they have learned in the previous month and used in their classroom to share with their learning with their fellow colleagues, and thus learning from one another and also developing their understanding not only about components of reading, but also the material that was provided to them. After this phase, after the TAG meeting, this was a basically 2-year model. So there were 17 monthly TAG meetings that were conducted over the period of 2 years, and there were few months were missing. It was basically due to summer or winter holidays that are usually done in Pakistan for 3 or more months. So to accommodate those whole 2 years, teachers were provided support for that 2 years. And the third most important aspect of this whole model was basically school sport visit. For this purpose, for the school sport visit and the on-the-job support to the teacher inside the classroom, PRP developed a pool of specially trained mentors and the project staff who visited the teachers inside the classroom and provided them on-the-job support to use what they have learned in face-to-face training and also in TIG meeting. Usually, a teacher gets support twice in a quarter, once from the project staff member and once from the mentor or the coach. These people were basically, the mentors were basically government teachers who were specifically involved for this purpose to support the intervention in the field inside the classroom, and also to make sure that once the project is out of this situation, out of this scenario, then the government have these trained mentors with them to continue their intervention in the field. Over to Hira.
Hello everyone, my name is Hira Siddiqui and I'm a researcher for education at the IRC. I will be talking about the results from our research study. Next slide. So what do we know so far about the PRP program? We conducted a quasi-experimental study comparing baseline to endline for treatment and control schools and found that the PRP program is very effective and is having small to medium effects on students' reading skills, as well as medium to large effects on teachers' instructional practices. And all of this was achieved at a cost of $39 per child. These effects were sustainable during the extended treatment phase as well, when we reduced the professional development supports. And the cumulative effects on students' reading skills became bigger in magnitude. So now that we already know that the PRP program as a whole is very effective, we wanted to find out which of the different ingredients of the professional development model are the most cost effective. So for the study we're going to be talking about today, we had 5 research questions, but we will only be talking about 2 of them today. The first question we will be talking about is, what are the unique effects of providing face-to-face trainings, TIGs, and school support visits on teachers' instructional practices? We also have data on students' reading outcomes, but the results from those are forthcoming. The second question we will be answering today is, what is the cost of materials, face-to-face trainings, TIGs, and school support visits? And then which of those ingredients ended up being the most cost-effective in the end? We will try to touch a little bit on the rest of the 3 questions when we're talking about the next steps towards the end of the presentation. The research design was an RCT, so the design was experimental. We used a longitudinal study, so we tracked the same teachers and students at endline that we had measured at baseline. We used a sequential mixed methods explanatory design, and we collected quantitative data at 3 different points in time. We collected baseline quantitative data in April 2018 when students entered grade 1, midline data in April 2019 when students finished grade 1, and then endline data in December 2019 when students were at the midway point in grade 2. Each of the quantitative data collection waves was followed by a wave of qualitative data collection to shed more light on the quantitative findings and to understand anything that might be puzzling in those findings. We also collected ongoing monitoring data so that we are able to link our outcome data to the implementation data to see how outcomes correlated with the quality and fidelity of implementation. Our RCT had 4 treatment arms, and the random assignment was done at the school level. We did not have a pure control group because we had already reached all schools at that point. So our comparison group in the study is the full treatment group, where schools got all the different ingredients of the program. And then we had 3 variation groups where students got all the different ingredients except for 1. So they either got everything but no face-to-face training, everything but no TIGs, or everything but no school support visits. We had a total of 200 schools in our study at baseline. We did have a lot of attrition, unfortunately, at endline. We lost 1 entire district because we were not able to get an NOC from the government to collect data there. So at endline, we could only collect data from 153 schools with an attrition rate of 23.5%, 153 teachers with an attrition rate of 17.3%, and we were able to successfully track 1842 students, so the attrition rate for students was about 40%. We looked at the baseline balance on exogenous as well as endogenous teacher and student characteristics and found that all treatment groups were comparable on those variables at baseline. So the randomization worked. This is important because given that all groups started at the same level at baseline, any differences we see at endline can be attributed directly to the intervention. Also, given that we had a lot of attrition, we looked at the baseline balance for the recontacted endline sample, and the groups were still balanced, and there were no major differences in the composition of the different groups. So we don't consider attrition to be a big threat to the internal validity of our study. The instrument that we used to measure reading outcomes was the early grade reading assessment, and to measure teaching competencies was a standardized teacher classroom observation tool. We had pretty high Cronbach's alpha for all of the different competencies we're measuring, so our measures have good internal reliability, with only the exception of orientation to print, which had lower levels of internal reliability, but is still pretty close to the acceptable level. But generally, our measures look pretty good. So for the analytic strategy, we used a difference in differences approach to calculate impact, and we estimated it using multi-level regression models controlling for key student and teacher variables. For the costing study, we used an ingredients-based approach to estimate cost of the different ingredients and used a cumulative sum to come up with the cost of different packages of ingredients. So now looking at the results and how the teacher's instructional practices changed from baseline to endline. We see that at baseline, a very high proportion of teachers, about 80 to 90%, were showing only emerging levels of good teaching practices in all of the different treatment groups. We see that the proportion of teachers showing emerging levels did decrease by a lot at endline for all of the groups, and most of the teachers were able to transition to proficient or exemplary levels of performance. We also see that for the full treatment group, almost 50% of the teachers were able to reach exemplary levels of performance at endline. Whereas for the variation groups, where we withhold one ingredient, a much smaller proportion, about 20 to 30% of teachers were able to reach exemplary levels of performance. So holding back any one of the ingredients does affect the teachers negatively. Now let's look at the difference in difference estimates. So note again that we're comparing here the effect of not providing one of the ingredients compared to the full treatment where we are providing everything. So negative effect here is a good thing and means that the ingredient is effective in improving outcomes. So all effects here are in standardized terms. So anything between 0.2 to 0.5 would be considered to be a small effect size. Between 0.5 and 0.8 would be medium, and anything above 0.8 would be large. We see that withholding any of the three ingredients is having negative effects, with the biggest negative effects being for the school support visits. We are seeing medium to large effects for school support visits on all teaching competencies. And then for face-to-face trainings and TIGs, we're seeing small to medium effects. So all the ingredients are effective in improving teaching practices, with the most effective being the school support visits, the effects for which are almost double. I should also add that none of these estimates are statistically significant because we lost a lot of power at endline due to attrition. However, we consider anything above 0.25 standard deviations to be a meaningful impact. So going by that standard, the impacts here are quite big. So yeah, that's all for the impact results from my end, and I'll pass on now to my colleague to talk about the costing study.
Just
Just
hold
to
on.
say, this
Okay.
is Bidami. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, with respect to the costing, as we mentioned, we are going to check what the cost of these variation, which we are having ingredient teacher face-to-face, TIG group, and school sport visit. And we had, along with these treatment arms, we are having some fixed cost, which is anchored by the project at the district level and at the provincial level. At the same time, we are having the reading learning material for the teacher and the student that is provided to everyone, along with the other training costs. So our main focus is to just find it out all there's teacher face-to-face, TIG, and school sport visit and corner library cost. If you see the table where we have seen cost per school by variant, we have the much of the major cost is that's a $756. That is a fixed cost, which the project has to anchor while implementing the project there for opening the offices and the employees, all these things. With respect to the treatments, you see that we are only spending TID $170 and for the RLM $235 and teacher face-to-face $99 and school sport visits are $190 and along with the corner library. Total cost for full package is $1,519. But this cost is not for the government because the government does not have to establish the fake cost. For the government, it is really only $790 per school, and with only $23 per students, whereas compared to the project, it's a $45 per student. So while concluding this thing, we have observed that with $1,519 full package is the most cost-effective PD package, which really contributed towards the good standard aviation teacher instructional practices improvement of that. And within that full package, the school sport visit, this ingredient is the much more cost-effective with respect to teacher instruction practices. As mentioned, for the limitation, we had some internal validity. Already mentioned the randomized was worked very well. Iteration didn't change the composition of the group, and anything above than the 2.25 standard deviation is a meaningful, though the iteration has some effect on the power of study. For the external validity, this study was conducted in the one of the province of the Pakistan, that's a KP. So one need to be cautioned while generalizing the result to the other province. Reference to the next step, we have collected data with respect to the students, how the students' results will be affected by the PDs, which we have already there, and the result will be expected by the end of April. We had a MNE data, that is we have for the TID and SSV implementation monitoring. We have monitored the process, how the things are moving on, and just to check the fidelity and how it's being implemented, that is another part which we had in. And that results will be also expected by the end of the April. With respect to the qualitative data, we had conducted the interviews with the SSA, mentors, teachers, and with the students to, from the low performing and the high performing schools to shed the light with respect to the impact evaluation findings. That's it from our side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hira and team. From Pakistan, we will be going to Tanzania. So Javinda, if you can set things up on your end, start sharing your screen. So while that's happening, there were a couple of questions for the team. And okay, so we'll take the questions at the end, given that Javina is ready to go. So at the end of all the presentations, we'll get to the questions. Javina, feel free to share your screen so people know who you are and to show your video. Please go ahead, Javina. You might be on mute.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jovina Kibenda from Tanzania. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my name is Jovina Kibenda from Tanzania, and I'm going to present to you our topic is sustainable model for coaching of teachers within national education. I'm having trouble here. Okay, so under USA, our program is called USA Tusome Pamoja, and it has 3 areas of implementation. The first area is improving the quality of early grade basic skill instruction. The second one is system strengthening, and this is results area 2. And the third area is effective engagement of parents involved in supporting 3 Rs. So for this, the area that I'm going to talk about is coaching, and coaching falls under 2 areas. This is the school leadership, but also World Education Office and head teachers. So these are the 2 areas that are highlighted in yellow. These are the area where coaching falls under. So the strategy and the actors in the coaching as follow. The government of Tanzania education delivery is, as you can see in the diagram there, that it starts from the government, and then it goes to the Ministry of Education play part in the delivery of the education, but also Prime Minister's Office, regional administration and local government, which is called in short is called PORAG. PORAG is responsible for local government authorities. And I want you to focus on the ward and school because that's where the coaching is taking place. So the school are based in the ward, and the ward education officer is the person who is the supervisor close to the school. Ward education officers have about 5 to 8 schools. Each education officer has about 5 to 8 schools. So the strategy that Tusome Pamoja uses is we strengthen the existing government structure. So we don't have outsiders acting as coaches, but we use the government structures. So that means we use ward educational officers who are close to school supervisors. We use head teachers and academic teacher. Or for Zanzibar, we have also Zanzibar that use the lead teachers. So what Tusome Pamoja does is to strengthen the existing government structure, but also we strengthen the delivery of the curriculum through coaching. Also, we have communities of learning happening at schools, and that one we also strengthen that because we know that communities of learning complement the coaching. Another thing that we, as Tusome Pamoja, that we are proud of doing is highlighting the pedagogical role of ward educational officers. In the past, it used to be ward educational officers focusing more on administrative roles. But as Tusome Pamoja, we came up with strategies of making sure that the ward educational officer also does the pedagogy, support the pedagogy in the classroom. So that is our strategies when it comes to Tusome Pamoja. So on the implementation side, we have goals. One of the goals is to improve teaching. So we know for sure that once we have the teaching being improved, then the learning will also be increased. So Tusome Pamoja, under Tusome Pamoja, we also respect the fact that teachers have good practices. So what we do is making sure that we capitalize on those good practices that the teachers have and try to strengthen those. But also we base on problem solving and the teachers applying those by reflecting on the alternative teaching strategies. Another very important key issue that we look at, or the goals of coaching in Tanzania, is to create paradigm shift. This is, we know that usually it is based on supervisor, for example, the ward education officer being supervisor and the teacher being the recipient of the orders or the getting instruction from the supervisor. But we've been trying to create paradigm shift where the supervisor and the teacher create a team mentality or partnership instead of just receiving the orders or receiving the instructions or giving orders or instructions. We also empower teachers through professional development. So as you can see, one of the main goals that we can say that we've been very successful is creating the paradigm shift of the supervisors, or creating the partnership between the teachers and the supervisors who are close to school supervisors. And in this time, you will hear me saying, where is the ward educational officer? Then the behaviors that we've been trying to change or to promote is ongoing partnership between the coach and the teacher, like I said before. Also, the people who are involved in the coaching to see this as a joint learning process with a shared goal. But also we're trying to use effective teaching practices or strategies that come from the teachers themselves, and also reflection and conversation. As you all know that the conversation between the supervisors and the supervisees sometimes can be complicated. So in coaching, we try to promote those behaviors by having them reflect and conversate, but also making better decisions when it comes to improving student learning. So that's the behaviors that we are trying to promote through coaching. So our coaching training model is, as you can see there, we have on the left-hand side, the people who are receiving the training, and then the coaching itself and the level of delivery. So we start at the national level where we have master trainers training from the training colleges. We also have district academic officers and quality assurers who are part of the master training team. Then those train the tutors, other tutors and district academic officers and quality assurers at the regional level. Then go down to the district level where those trainees impart the knowledge to ward education officers, head teachers, and academic officers. As you can see, those two boxes are similar, but the reason behind is that those teachers are small select team, and then they impart that knowledge to their fellow ward educational officers and head teachers. And then at the school level, that's where the actual coaching happens. The head teachers, academic teachers do coach the teachers in the classroom, but also the ward education officer also can coach the teachers at the school and in the classroom as well. Like I said, we've been trying to make sure that the WEO is not just doing the administrative roles, but also the pedagogical roles, which has shown to be very important and necessary. So in our coaching program, we had some findings and observations that we would like to share. And one of the findings were from the operational research that we conducted. Every year we conduct operational research that informs our program. So when it comes to coaching, we also had some findings. One of the findings, and I have explained this before, is that it showed that ward education officers who are close to school supervisors spend more time on administrative tasks as opposed to supporting teachers on pedagogical issues. And remember that we are also working with the government. So these findings were very, very important to the government in the implementation of their daily activities. Also, the findings from our operational research show that around 1/3 of ward educational officers coach teachers on their regular school visits. And that's a very good thing that we found and which we wanted to still continue to capitalize on. But also the findings showed us that the teachers preferred to be coached by their peers. And also we interviewed some effective WEO who said they also depend on competent teachers to coach other teachers. So we used this finding as Tusome Pamoja to train exemplary teachers who will be now the coach of their peers. Because we thought that we know that the findings that we're getting from the field are very helpful and they are practical. So we use this to come up with the criteria, not only us, but we collaborated with the government to come up with the criteria of having exemplary teachers who then coach their fellow teachers. Apart from operational research findings that we conducted ourselves, we also used the RTI research findings. There was a study that was conducted by RTI, and the findings showed that coaches and teachers have developed a relationship with their teachers they work with, and that is based on the kindness and mentorship. And so, as you know, most of the people who have been in the field, it was usually in the inspection. People will go in the field and do as inspection as opposed to supporting and mentoring and developing some sort of a relationship with teachers. So the research findings show that the coaches now have developed some kind of relationship with their coachees, which is very important in coaching. And also, it showed that the relationship has helped the teachers to feel comfortable reflecting in their practices and asking questions, but also receiving feedback. Because in the past, it was like they will be very resistant, not resistant, but they are very defensive when it comes to that. But with coaching, it became that they are now comfortable receiving feedback, also asking questions to their their supervisors, because in the past it was like you receive the instruction, no questions asked. But with coaching, it showed that there was some sort of good relationship. So, and then from the field observations, from implementing this coaching, we as Tusome Pamoja, we observe that where visit the assigned schools more regularly now. Also, ward education officers, or will say subject advisor for Zanzibar case, show better understanding of their roles as coaches. Because in the past it was somehow vague. They only felt themselves as supervisors, no questions asked, no conversation, no reflection. Then the head teacher, we also observed that head teachers and academic teachers needed to be monitored and supported. From the observation, we saw that not only do you teach or train the teachers and leave it there, you still need to support them, you need to monitor them so as to get a quality coaching. So those were the observation and the learning from the findings from the researches that we've conducted and the research from our sister RTI conducted. So of course, in any TP has seen good things in its implementation, but of course, this cannot go without any hiccups. So for example, we saw that behavior change is not as an overnight thing. Teachers are used to receiving instruction or orders. Teachers are used to receiving orders or instructions from their superiors, and the superiors are used to giving instruction or orders to their supervisee. So changing that behavior is not as an easy thing. So it takes time. So that is something that we learned as a hiccup, or it's something that it should not be overlooked, because behavior change is a long-term thing. Another thing is building trust, especially for new teachers. We have observed that new teachers do not build trust with their supervisors right away. It needs time for them to develop that trust, but also it needs time for supervisors to understand the gaps and to strike that conversation and reflection. Because usually we have a tendency of being defensive. So if your supervisor comes, you just want to pretend that you know everything, and at the end of the day, the gaps are not identified, or you are not comfortable enough to reflect what you've done. So this is something that we've learned, that it needs time. So from implementing coaching, we also learned some lessons, but also we can comfortably give some recommendation on coaching. So one of the things that we've learned is that using accountability structure as part of teacher support design is very helpful, because we didn't have to use any outsider. We were using the system. Also, another thing that we learned is that coaching needs time, because you need to strike that conversation, you need to reflect. So there's time that is needed there. Another thing that we learned was strong government collaboration. This is something that we can be very proud of, that we have a very strong collaboration with the government, and we use existing government structures to strengthen, even to go further. So most of the thing goes smoothly because we are not bringing anything new. Sometimes the government know, but they have no means, or sometimes they neglect. So it's something that when we collaborate, we've seen good things happening. Another thing that we've learned is, I've said this before, that we need to ensure that coaching is taking place. WELS need to ensure coaching is taking place. You just don't train and leave it right there. You just continue to monitor, you continue to support, so that you get a good quality coaching. Another thing that we've learned is using evidence to support coaching. And this builds strong sustainability prospects. We've been using evidence from the field to make sure that the teacher can easily relate to what we're finding out. And most of the time we do with the people from the government. So it's not anything new. It's not something that we get it from the air. It's something that comes from the field, and we bring it back to the system to improve it. So those are the lessons that we've learned. Then when it comes to sustainability, Tusome Pamoja has done few things regarding to that. When we started the project, we started by funding the transport allowance for ward education officers to move across their schools. But then now the government has taken it up. That is a good thing because it's within the system now. We do, Tusome Pamoja does not pay any transport allowance any longer. Then we have these communities of learning meetings that occur within the government system. This is another thing that when we started, this was in the paper. The government had it, but they were not active. So as Tusome Pamoja activated it, we even went step further by including it in the timetable. Now the communities of learning are happening at schools and it's within the government system. We also, the coaching is also built into the government structure. So those are the key things that we've done when it comes to sustainability with coaching. And I think that's the end of our presentation as Tusome Pamoja.
Thank you very much, Jovina. We will be going from Tanzania to Nigeria. Let's all keep our collective fingers crossed that we can get Toby online. Oh, looks like something's happening. Toby?
Hi, Bidimi.
Oh, great.
Online.
This is great. Okay. So if you can
Yeah.
put it on slideshow mode,
Mm-hmm.
and I will go off and over to you. Jovina, if you can mute as well.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Toby. Over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and apologies for missing my first slot. So my name is Toby Mbaya from Creative Associates, and I'll be presenting this together with Isaac Sukwa. We'll be talking about the video of instruction practices as a coaching tool for teachers and rate of improved performance. So the Northern Education Initiative, that's the project that we've been on, is a 5-year project, and it is aimed at improving the quality of reading in Bauchi and Sokoto State and increasing the access for girls and adult school children to basic education. Regular coaching and mentoring are regarded as essential to continuous teacher professional development, especially in developing contexts like Nigeria. And then this classroom coaching is for my context, which is Nigeria, specifically Sokoto and Bauchi State in northern Nigeria. The coaching responsibilities is given or delegated to the district level government officers, also known as SSOs, that is school support officers. They are the ones that are assigned with the duty of supervising teachers and also coaching teachers. We'll be looking at how the initiative has supported 100 of these SSOs in both states with tablets and tablet-based coaching. On the screen, this is a picture of an SSO providing coaching feedback to a teacher after classroom observation. On the picture, you can see a Pico projector, a tablet, and then speakers. The school support officer is actually showing a video of a particular EGR practice that he is coaching the teacher on. So classroom, we use the tool of classroom observation. Classroom coaching and mentoring is done by SSOs through observation. This is an effective model of teacher-centered professional development in contexts such as Sokoto and Bauchi states. The classroom observation provides opportunities for the SSOs to give individualized coaching to EGR teachers based on the outcome of observation. The SSOs were trained around April 2019 on conducting tablet-based classroom observation, and then were also trained on coaching and providing feedback, individualized feedback to EGR teachers. So whenever the SSO comes into the classroom and observes an EGR teacher, the tablet automatically collates a specific or individualized response. And then from this response, the SSO provides the feedback to the teacher. What makes our classroom observation different and innovative is the use of videos. Videos have been shown to actually be to provide evidence and models for new ideas and demonstrate intended practice for teachers. Through videos, teachers are able to see exactly what they need to do and how they need to do it. And for us, this drives the use of the videos for coaching in EGR, coaching for EGR teachers in Bauchi and Sokoto. So usually after the observation, the SSO sits together with the EGR teacher and provides feedback. And then that feedback session is actually when the SSO coaches the teacher. Before the use or the introduction of videos, the SSO tries really hard to demonstrate what the teacher needs to do and what the teacher doesn't need to do. But I have to bring something up a lot of our SSOs due to inadequate professional development or from the quality of recruitment at the beginning. However, with the introduction of videos, the SSO is able to give the teacher specific and targeted coaching. The videos provide a visual representation of EGR teaching strategies and reading principles. These videos are contextually and culturally relevant. Now, the reading team of the initiative, together with the media team, produced a couple of videos that were shot in Sokoto and Bauchi classrooms. This is to ensure that the videos were contextually and culturally relevant. And the videos were shot with EGR teachers teaching in a live classroom without any form of practice. Therefore, when teachers are shown these videos during coaching, they're able to identify and relate with the content. These videos are readily available to SSOs based on gaps identified during classroom observation. Now, I mentioned that the ICT-based classroom observation was introduced in April 2019. And from April 2019 till now, we have actually seen that coaches who show teachers the video-based best practice demonstrations have improved teacher performance. What we have done as a project is, like I mentioned earlier, we produced a couple of videos that showed specific EGR teaching strategies and reading practice that we wanted our teachers to learn. Teacher performance in specific instructional practice, as mentioned by the coach on the tablet, and the number of times a teacher views a video on that same instructional practice has also improved. So, for example, some of the key areas that we targeted in the videos was teacher preparation, EGR teaching strategies, pupils engagement, and checking for understanding. And as a result, we've seen improved performance in this. I don't know if Isaac, are you here to talk a bit on the dashboard? Anyway, okay. So on the screen, what you have right now is the picture of just a screenshot of the dashboard on the dashboard. On the first box, we have increased number of visitation. So when we introduced the tablet and the use of videos in April, we had about 349 visits. And then by July, which was the end of the term, we had 678 visits in both states. The low period, August and September, that was during the holidays. So we have also seen an increased visits because SSOs are more empowered. Because of the videos, they are confident in actually coaching the teachers. As I mentioned earlier, the SSO, we're struggling with low capacity among our school support officers also, but because the videos are readily available on the tablet, SSOs are confident in providing feedback to the teachers. Then the next box shows number of unique school visits per month. Also, you can see an increase from 180 during the introduction to 326 in July. Then August, September, well, we had a couple of school visits. And then it picked up in October down to December, which was holiday, and then increased in January till March, just before the school closures in Nigeria. So what are our next steps? Our next steps are actually tied closely to the challenges. Like I mentioned, as of April 2019, only 100 SSOs were supported with ICT tablets that had videos for coaching. But one of the major challenges we had was with scale. However, in between February and March, the initiative has been able to increase the number of SSOs that were provided tablets to 350. Of course, that doesn't cover all the SSOs or school support officers in both states. Now, these tablets have been updated with new videos showing EGRL strategies such as pair work. In addition, we also need to produce more videos. Like I mentioned earlier, the videos that was produced targeted only 4 key areas: teaching preparation, pupils engagement, EGRL teaching strategies. But the initiative is looking to produce more videos so that we can capture everything that has to do with early grade reading. Thank you, and that is it for my presentation. I would like to see if Isaac is here, he would want to add anything. If not, that is it from us. Thank you.
Hello, Toby, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome, Isaac.
Yes, just to add maybe just a couple of points. So the dashboard is just an extension of the information. So the major purpose of our use of ICT is to provide support to the school support officers, to provide technical support to the teachers. But by extension, we are also able to get data, which is used as also as a management tool for education secretaries as well as for people from SUBEB. So, for example, we can be able to track to see how many visits are the SSOs conducted within a given particular time. We're also able to see how many visits have been conducted to a particular teacher. So we can track a school and we can track a teacher. So we're able to see the gap. We're able to see which teachers have been visited, which teachers have not been supported. Also, just to, I think also to just to add, in terms of how this has been viewed by the state, it's so encouraging to see that now both Bauchi and Sokoto State have actually procured their own tablets just to model on what we're doing. So we started with, I think, 100 SSOs, but now the states have been able to procure their own tablets, and they're actually now championing this coaching and mentoring support. So it's just interesting to see how the state have received this. I think they are seeing value in what in this type of approach, this type of coaching approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaac. And thank you very much, Toby. There are some questions for you on the group chat, and we can get to them at the end of the presentations. So the final presentation is from Teshome, who will be, Teshome, are you there? Feel free to share your screen. And Teshome will be talking about coaching in Afghanistan. Thank you very much. Please put it on slideshow and then you can take it from here. I think you're on mute, Tishome. Tishome, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
There we go. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever we are. My name is Tashome Benya from Afghanistan Children Read Project, ACR. My topic is group coaching practices for early grade reading teachers in Afghanistan. We want to share some preliminary findings from an implementation study. Right here. I'm stuck. Okay. Afghanistan is a conflict zone country, as it's well known, and it is supported by USAID to implement early grade literacy. As such, early grade literacy is a new initiative. Teachers are not trained or prepared to build children's foundation in literacy. Consequently, the in-service training of teachers in early grade reading is a priority for Afghanistan, and it is organized in two ways. One is workshop-based training, the other is school-based support. In the school-based support, we find individual coaching and group coaching. Group coaching is a year-round, consistent and continuous provision of teacher support at school level. It involves sharing of experiences to solve common instructional problems among literacy teachers. The purpose of group coaching is to strengthen and reinforce students' performance based on the continuous assessment of students by teachers. And it is also to ensure that the delivery of reading instruction is done by well-trained and knowledgeable teachers. Group coaching takes place in teacher learning circles, or what we call TLCs. Afghan Children Read established like 266 TLCs in all its pilot provinces since 2017. TLCs are led by school coaches. So leadership of TLCs is by coaches. School principals provide facilities, meeting spaces, moral support, while the project provides some logistical support. Teaching learning circles, or TLCs, meet once per month for 60 to 90 minutes. Each TLC is expected to have about 50 members. But the main strategy for TLCs, as I said, is to identify areas of students' low performance or their weakness in basic literacy skills, and set an agenda for discussion by group members in the TLC. Why this implementation study? Although group coaching offers promising alternatives for addressing the needs of early grade teachers at local level, much is not known to us whether it is practiced in schools as we have intended it. So the purpose of the study was to explore the extent to which group coaching through TLCs have been implemented in ACR supported schools. The main research question was as follows. How do early grade literacy teachers practice group coaching through TLCs in Afghanistan? We had sub-questions. The first one was, how is the TLC organized at school level? 2, what are the most important student learning issues discussed in TLCs? 3, how do teachers assess the contribution of TLCs for their own professional development? And 4, what are the most important challenges to implement the group coaching through TLCs? Our methodology was a multiple case study approach. Our method of data collection were observations, using observational formats, having open-ended questions, and rating items on a 3-point scale. Interviews, We used interview guides with open-ended questions and documents. Source of data were teachers, principals, coaches, and documents. Our sample selection was purposive, of course. We selected 26 TLCs, 52 teachers, 42 coaches, and 26 principals. The implementation of research was that ACR trained 28 data collectors before data collection, then conducted a two-round data collection in all 4 provinces that are target provinces for ACR. We started data analysis. Observational data weighting scales were summarized using descriptive statistics. Interview data analysis is ongoing. Also open-ended items are also being analyzed in a narrative format. We considered some ethical standards. We obtained informed consent of all participants. We granted confidentiality of information and anonymity of participants as well. Now, key findings. What did we get? I will refer to observational and interview data. From observational data for the first question, organization of TLC meetings from observation in percentage, as you can see. Observers were asked to rate the organization of TLC meetings from 6 perspectives. Provision of space, assignment of qualified coaches, proper time management, refreshment and writing materials availability, regularity of meeting, attendance is full, and collaboration with CBEs. What we call CBEs are community-based education centers. They are for expanding access in Afghanistan, and we support the inclusion of CBEs, the support of CBEs by the TLCs. As the result shows, the organization of TLCs is at acceptable. We give 3 points in the scale: not observed, acceptable, and excellent. So in all points, the TLC organization generally is at acceptable level. But of course, there are concerns, as you can see, with collaboration of CBEs. They are not observed by observers. And a little bit of concern also with refreshment and writing material skills, materials availability. When we did the interviews, we found out that TLC meetings take place once per month as desired. Membership in TLCs is mostly less than 15, and then sometimes it's more than 15 for different areas. And there is no problem of absence. So overall, what these 2 data tell is that both observational and interview data shows that TLC's organization is quite at acceptable level. However, major concern is collaboration with CBEs. The second question, the second area where we explore organization is, is the method of conducting TLC meetings in schools, the procedures of doing it. We gave 6 dimensions: whether they use group discussion, explanation of issues, or demonstration of solutions to problems, discussion of student problems, and the use of examples or case study simulation during the discussion. Results show that in all these areas, TLCs are at acceptable level. That group discussion is taking place, explanations, demonstrations, discussions of student problems are ongoing there. But the concern is also use of examples, case study simulation are not very much observed in these TLC meetings. Coach-teacher interaction in TLC meetings. This is coach behavior or leadership behavior. We gave 6 main dimensions to explore this. Actively engaged in teacher questions, encouragement of teacher questions, provision of enough time, encouragement of cooperative learning, responding to questions appropriately, and demonstration of awareness of individual needs and skills. Again, this data shows that coaches are doing very well in interacting, giving leadership to TLCs. But of course, there are concerns, as you can see, in awareness of individual needs and skill gaps for teachers. Interview data also shows the same thing. It's interesting. Most teachers describe their TLC experience with the coach as transparent, collegial, punctual, interactive, and cooperative. But few teachers said coaches must better manage and control meetings. Minutes are not taken, individual problems are not noted down and discussed. So the overall observation is that individual needs and skill gaps are a little bit downplayed in these TLC discussions and the meetings. The most important student problems discussed at TLC meetings. This is very important. We provided like 12 anticipated areas of problems that can be discussed at TLCs. These are taken from our continuous assessment guide. 7 of these problems are directly related to reading skills. The other 4, like social emotional learning, continuous assessment, classroom management, inclusive environment, are related to instruction in general. What is very interesting from this finding is that one problem dominates the discussion. Others are discussed only at a low level. Fluency problems, reading fluency problems. Interviews also showed the same thing. Reading fluency and the creative writing are the most discussed problems according to coaches. Others are very much at the low level in general. What do teachers think of the contribution of TLCs to teacher professional development? No differences opinions among teachers about positive contribution of TLCs to their development. This is interesting. They identified areas of improvement that they got from TLCs, like content knowledge reading, pedagogy of teaching reading, continuous assessment, classroom management, attitudinal and behavior change, critical thinking. All these were areas that were mentioned by teachers. Teacher 1, for instance, I quoted teacher 1. He says like this: our professional knowledge has been increased. Our mind got improved. Our skills and the techniques have been improved. We are motivated. It helps us greatly in evaluating the students and find out weaker students in order to support them. So on, and it goes on for teacher 2 and teacher 3. Some challenge to TLC implementation, as we have observed. Membership of TLCs, the size of TLCs fluctuates. It is sometimes less than 15 and more than 15. 15 is really not very high. Lack of focus to concretizing TLC discussions from real classroom experiences. Like we have said, simulations, examples are not used in TLC discussion. Lack of some resources for the meeting, like paper, pencil, small things, were also mentioned. Low attention given to resolve individual teacher needs and skill gaps. Definitely, this is a basic observation. Individual teacher needs and the problems are very much covered by common problems that teachers have faced. Low level of discussion on relevant reading skills, except one reading skill, the reading fluency. Collaboration of TLCs with CBs was not observed. Now, lessons learned. TLCs can be organized at an acceptable level, even if conditions for such organization are difficult. I'm referring to the context in Afghanistan, where it's very difficult, but still we are able to organize TLCs. Second, well-organized TLCs are able to apply participatory methods for conducting TLC methods. It is very important that such meetings are two-way communication, and this is observed very well. Again, another lesson is well-organized TLCs need good leadership of committed coaches. Without coaches, their commitment, it doesn't happen. And finally, TLCs can be centers for discussing and solving student learning problems and also teacher competencies. These are the major lessons, and this is the end of presentation, and we come back to discussions and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tashome, and thank you to all of our presenters. If I can ask you, Tashome, if you can stop sharing your screen, and if I can ask the presenters if you're able to turn your video on for the question and answer part of this. And what I'll do is there have been already quite a number of questions in the chat screen, so I will pick a few of these and ask the panelists. And if other people have questions after that, depending on the time, we should be able to take some more questions as well. So the first question for the PRP team goes like this. It sounds like the school support visits are significantly more important than either the teacher meetings or the face-to-face training. If you had to choose between the two, what would it be? Face-to-face teacher training or the teacher meetings? So that's for the PRP team. You can be thinking about that. For, let's see. I think this is for Nigeria. What was SSO training like? I assume that some SSOs might have had pedagogical knowledge they had gained prior to the program. Was there any case reported that SSO's prior pedagogical knowledge or styles interrupted program implementation in relation to what coaches demonstrate to teachers? And this is for everyone. Have any of the initiatives presented so far worked with teacher trade unions or teacher associations as the system level actor representing the teaching profession? Governments and communities are included, but not the profession. For Afghanistan, what material do teachers have for TLC meetings? And also a question about what do you mean by SEL competency problems? Is SEL also a part of your EGL curriculum? So if presenters can take this, we'll start in the order in which we presented. So PRP, if you can take the question that was posed for you.
Sure, I can take that question. So yes, for the question about which of the different ingredients we would pick. So yes, the school support visits definitely are showing the biggest impacts on teachers. And then based on some of the preliminary results we have from the student outcomes, which we didn't present today, we are seeing that they also have the biggest impacts on students' outcomes. So they're definitely the most effective. And then to the second part of the question on whether we would pick face-to-face trainings or the teacher or TIG meetings. So again, we also have preliminary results for those on the student outcomes. And we do find that the face-to-face trainings have bigger impacts on students' reading outcomes compared to the TIGs. And also the cost of face-to-face trainings is much lower than the cost of TIGs. So then, that makes the face-to-face trainings a lot more cost-effective. So if we were to kind of, pick between the TIGs and the face-to-face trainings, it would be the face-to-face trainings because they're more cost-effective.
Okay, thank you. For Tanzania, I don't think I gave you a question, but there's a question here for you. How long was the duration of this coaching intervention? And did coaches get any compensation for traveling to schools? So Jovina, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, this started back in 2000. last year, and coaches did not get any compensation. But like I said, the coaches are close to school supervisors, and water education officers are already getting fuel from the government. We started paying for the fuel, but then the government took it over. So now they can go to the schools with the motorbike being fueled by the government. But also other coaches are from the school. The head teachers and academic teachers come from the school where the coaching takes place, so they don't need transport.
Okay, thank you. Toby? You want to unmute, please?
Sorry about that. I took note of a lot of the questions. Do you want to ask my second question? Because I have so many that I picked up from the, sorry about that.
I think the one I asked was, what was the SSO training like? Was there any case reported where the prior pedagogical knowledge interrupted program implementation in relation to what coaches demonstrate to teachers? But feel free to answer that or any of the other ones that you got that you want to answer.
Okay, so the SSO training, we provided training on early grade reading. That was like the first training that they had from the beginning of the project. And then we, and this training was conducted like continuously. So within a year, they can have like 2 trainings, you know. And then the next training that we provided was on coaching. So we noticed that the SSOs are used to their responsibilities as supervisors, but when it comes to coaching teachers, this is it was something new. Although on paper it is part of their responsibility, but it's something that they never really did. So that was a training that we introduced. And also when we're introducing the ICT tablets, we also provided training for them on how to use the ICT tablet to conduct classroom observation and access the resources such as the videos, and then to conduct feedback session and coach the teachers. And these are the trainings that we provided, and then they are continuous trainings. And also the SSOs are always part of trainings that are meant for teachers. So whenever we're into, for example, when we were trying to focus on EGR teaching practices such as pair work, use of gestures and use of local resources to teach reading, what we did was that we made sure that that training was also provided for the teachers so they could understand what the expectations for teachers are. Now, reading is new in Nigeria. So what we have is just teaching English as a second language. But then when you look through the curriculum of the country, we don't have anything that addresses reading on its own. However, the initiative, together with other international development partners, have been able to work with the National Commission for Colleges of Education to introduce reading in the curriculum for teacher education. That is just by the way. So the SSOs do not have any existing pedagogy, per se pedagogical knowledge that has to do with reading. So working, of course, they had training with respect to working with children, classroom management, and the rest. And some of them were even old teachers, because the way they were appointed were usually due to promotion by the government and other means. So they had that existing knowledge. Some of them had that, while others just came into the system new. And as with knowledge or residue, or as with knowledge, it is always going to act. You're always going to have people that when they find something new, it's going to be a challenge for them to use it, or it is something really, really far-fetched and the rest. But something I missed out in the presentation was that the videos also provided opportunities for SSOs to learn these strategies, because it is also something new for them. But they being in the custody of the tablets that had these videos, they had so much resources, they could always go back and, learn. So that is the current situation right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. Tashome, you want to take your question?
Yes. The first question about materials, I will divide it into two because ACR, Afghan Children Read, provide materials in two ways. One is when teachers are taking their training, they are provided with materials which help them to teach all basic components of reading. Secondly, there are curriculum materials, the package. These materials include teacher guides, student texts, workbooks, student workbooks, and student continuous assessment books. The student assessment books, the student assessment book enables teachers to assess the students from time to time along basic reading skills like listening, writing, speaking. All four areas of reading are put there, and students are always assessed by the teacher. It depends, well, the cycle, the frequency depends upon the class size, but normally we think that around 3 months a student can be assessed by a teacher, 3 months. So from there, teachers are picking up problems. How they learn how to analyze the data. Well, the assessment has different levels, level 1, 2, 3, or like we call it 1, 2, 3 in a scale. So based upon that, they calculate which problems are prevailing very much among the students, and then from there they pick up an issue or two issues that are set for discussion for TLCs. So materials are helping teachers in this way. The second question is SCL competencies. SCL competencies are very important in Afghanistan, particularly because of the existing situations there. Students need a very good self-management, very good social relations, adjustments with themselves and with teachers, and all that. So these competencies are given to teachers. They are trained on this teacher. Teachers are trained on SCL competencies, and then they support students in the classroom using these skills. So we are asking teachers in those questions whether such problems are prevailing and they are very important, whether they are very important to teachers to deal with. So as we have seen, SCL competencies are not the most important pressing issues that are discussed in these group meetings, but it is the basic reading skill, which is related to reading fluency, which is dominating. So normally, reading fluency is very important in reading skills acquisition. It's not astonishing that we find this type of results from our questions.
Okay.
It's a key skill.
Thank you. Can anyone comment on the question about working with teacher trade unions or teacher professional associations or any of the project teams?
Yeah, I can say a bit about that. So, for the initiative, we're not working directly with teachers trade unions. There is one in Nigeria, Nigerian Union of Teachers. However, we're working with the National Commission for Colleges of Education, who are the ones that are in charge of pre-service and in-service teacher training in Nigeria. And also what we have done was develop early grade reading pre-service training that has currently been piloted in the 2 states in 4 colleges of education. And as of this year, it was scaled up to other colleges of education across Nigeria. And like I mentioned earlier, what we have done is work together with other IGPs to ensure that early grade reading, especially our approach, is included in the national curriculum. So that is what we have done with that exercise. So what we're trying to do is to see that early grade reading is being introduced from pre-service level to in-service. And then we've also been working closely with federal level partners, which is the Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC, and then state level partners of education. They are the ones that are in charge of recruiting teachers and their capacity or professional development. And then what we've actively done is push for the review of teacher recruitment policy, teacher recruitment and deployment policy in both Sokoto and Bauchi. So this is what we have been doing with that regard, but not working directly with the National Union of Teachers.
Okay, great, thank you. I want to open it now, see if we can get some other voices to be heard. So if there's anyone who has a question, any of the many participants, thank you all so much, who has a question, who wouldn't mind asking it, please unmute yourself and you can direct it to any one panelist or all of them.
Hi, Bidemi. If I may, I think there are more questions that were dropped on the group chat.
Okay, just a minute. Let me just see if anyone wants to come in. Don't be shy. Kimberly, you had a question?
Yes, just about how is teacher behavior change being measured in the ACR project?
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Well, yeah, okay.
Okay, Tashome, go ahead and answer that.
Okay, thank you. I think in this study, we did not measure teacher behavioral change. We asked them to tell us what they feel that they have changed, what they feel that they have improved from what they had. So it is a self-report, self-confession, and like we have said, they have told us many things that they thought that they have benefited from the project. But in another study, we have measured teacher behavior change. Of course, it is a teacher performance evaluation study. That study, teachers were given tests, and we had to measure their behavioral change in a way, or their acquisition of knowledge and the competencies through those tests. And that's another study, not this one.
Okay, great, thank you. Toby, go ahead if there's any question you want to answer.
Hi, thank you, Bidemi. So there's a question about sustainability of interventions. I don't know if it was meant for everyone. Sustainability of intervention has been to involve or work closely with our partners at all levels, as I mentioned earlier, federal, state, and local government level, in training, in planning of our activities, and also planning of visits, especially when it comes to coaching of teachers through school support officers. And then what we have done is also train master trainers from colleges of education and line agencies, and from the inception of the project. And they have been the ones that are sort of mentors to the school support officers. So we have this scheme, what we call it coaching of coaches, whereby the staff of the initiative together with the master trainers actually go out on supportive supervision to school support officers and then mentor them or provide coaching for them, you know, that. And then also what we have done is work with the education management information system of the state. So we have trained them and also helped them to set up their own dashboard. You know, like Isaac mentioned, we have buy-in from the state. We have the state, Bauchi and Sokoto buying more tablets and the rest. And then, so the initiative has supported them in establishing their own management information system and the dashboard, whereby they're able to see what their SSOs are doing and provide the necessary support for them. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Elizabeth, Bess, you had a question?
Yes, I did. Thanks to all the panelists. My question is for, I think, for Toby and Isaac. You mentioned of the 3 ingredients for your model, face-to-face teacher face-to-face trainings was the most cost-effective. And I wanted to know more about your training model, because often face-to-face trainings are the more expensive option to school-based training and coaching. Can you talk a little bit about that, the teacher training model that you use that kept costs so low?
I think that was the Pakistan team.
Oh,
So
that was
Hira,
the Pakistan team.
yes,
Sorry.
Hira, if you can speak to that.
So I wasn't actually so involved with the implementation of the project, so maybe Irfan, if you could take that question.
Please do let me know the question. I already requested the Bedami. I was away for a few minutes for the prayer. If you can just repeat the question, I'll just tell about the implementation.
Yes, thank you, Irfan. I was asking about the teacher face-to-face training and what the model was for that training that you were able to keep the costs lower than, for example, coaching and school support.
I think from 3 of us, I'll request Zulfikar, because he's a director teacher training. He is taking care of that. Zulfikar, could you please respond to that question?
Sure. I hope people will not mind the background noise because here it's a prayer time and we are having azan, so might be it's impacting in the
That's
background.
okay.
With respect to the question, basically PRP used a cascade model of cascade model for the professional for the teacher training. We have our own staff, and also we selected some mentors from the government side who were trained at district level, and also to keep the cost lower, we provided them training at sub-cluster level, very close to their school-based training venues. So that is why we can see lower cost with respect to face-to-face training, and also we did not provide any extra cost with respect to like kind of per diem or something like that. It was just a travel cost to reach to the venue for teachers, and during that training they were provided some refreshment and something like that, and nothing else. That is why we can see a very lower cost in that. And with respect to school sport visit, TIG meeting, in TIG meetings too, we only provide them travel cost and also some refreshment during that meeting. And it's basically the mentors who were visiting those TIG meetings, providing support to them. They were also provided a kind of only refreshment and travel cost, nothing else.
Thank you, Zulfikar.
Thank you for that.
Can I add something?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I'm also from PRP. I'm heading the Sindh province here. And my experience has been that in the last few months, we had some budget issues, and for that reason, we had requested the teachers to come on for these TIG meetings, which were the monthly meetings, and there was actually zero cost in that as well. So people were willing to, once they were used to coming to these meetings. So for the last 4 or 5 meetings or monthly meetings, we had actually zero cost, and they were conducted at the same level of participation.
Great, thank you. Javina?
Yeah, I was going to answer the question was asked regarding how are we going to ensure that sustainability is going to continue once the project is gone. So we have, I presented that we have communities of learning, which has been taken up by the government. So the Commissioner of Education is going to sign on the managerial action that is go for the entire country. So coaching is under the communities of learning as continuous professional development. So that will be something that sustainability will be ensured, because then it will go, it comes from the Commissioner of Education, who signs for the policy. for the education.
Okay.
So I can add a little bit here.
Great. Yes, go
From
ahead.
Afghanistan. Yeah. One reason why we are doing this research or big assessment is to prove to government that our model is effective. Actually, it's not only group learning that we are assessing now. We're also working on individual coaching. We are also assessing the training that we have provided and the materials that we have provided. And this means that we are going to see how much effective our model is, and then based on evidences, we are going to advocate for the establishment of coaching and mentoring in Afghanistan. That's where we are heading to.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for the questions, for the lively discussions. So, as I mentioned, this is a two-part panel. I hope all or as many of you as possible will come back for round 2 of the coaching discussions and panels. We will take a 15-minute break. It's now just about 9:45. And we will start the next session at 10. So use the 15 minutes to get refreshed and get ready to come back and listen to the next group of papers. Thank you very much to all our panelists. It was really great to have people presenting from, all across the world. And though we had some challenges with the internet, I think it's always great to have people who are working daily on the projects to be the one talking about their projects. So thank you guys very much, and we look forward to the next round of presentations. Hope everybody will come back in 15 minutes. All right, see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
to the
Bye.
presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our effective coaching panel. I hope everyone took the time to get some water, eat something. So, second part, we have 3 presenters. We will start off with a presentation from IRC on Northern Nigeria, which is led by Sylvia, and then a presentation by Barbara Greenwood on Malawi merits coaching, and then finally a third presentation, and I'm blanking on what that is now, but I will bring it up as soon as I can.
Thank you, Demi. Should I start? Can I take control of the screen?
Yes, please,
okay.
please go ahead.
Okay. Wait, how do I do that? Share screen?
So Sylvia from IRC, yes.
Hi, so I'm Silvia Diaz Granados. I'm the Associate Director for Education Research at the International Rescue Committee. Demi, do I just share the screen? Is that what I do?
Yes, please share your screen.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be talking about some research that we did. It's similar to what we've done in Pakistan, but we did it in Nigeria. And so I'll be talking about the cost effectiveness of an accelerated learning program in Northeast Nigeria, and also the added value of providing on-site coaching to learning facilitators. And so. Nigeria, as you may know, since 2009 has had a lot of problems. Boko Haram displaced more than 2.2 million people. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I was just hearing some and has devastated an already weak education system. The work that we conducted, the IRC has been conducting some work in Yobe and Borno, northeast Nigeria. We know that in Nigeria is the country where there's more children out of school in the world. We know that there's 10.5 million children who are out of school. Boko Haram destroyed more than 1,200 schools, and 1,700 schools had closed due to the conflict. We know that 600 teachers have been killed, 19,000 teachers have been displaced. And because of these, the IRC created a non-formal learning center program that tried to really address the problem of access to safe learning opportunities, the problem of the lack of qualified teachers in Nigeria, and also the lack of pathways to transition into formal schools. So what we did is we created 400 non-formal learning centers that were providing an accelerated learning program for out-of-school children. And then we provided teaching and learning materials, and because of the lack of qualified teachers in the area where we were working with, recruited, trained, and supported 400 community members who were not teachers to work as learning facilitators. And so we provided the training for them. And what did we do? We basically provided non-formal learning education to 20,000 out-of-school children between the ages of 9 and 14. And we made sure that the learning facilitators would deliver quality of education in reading, in math, and social emotional learning. And we created some community coalitions to support the non-formal learning centers. Our hope was that all these things would lead to improved literacy, numeracy, and social emotional learning skills, and also that the children would be able to catch up with learn some of these skills and be able to transition and enroll into formal schools. And that, eventually this lead them to better adjustment and good psychosocial support. So one of the things that we did is that we had we had a coaching model that we would use to basically train the community members to become learning facilitators. And so the coaches in this case were the government staff that were working as school supervisors, but they were working not that was their day job, basically. Like, they have been working as school supervisors for the government, but we provide them with the our intention was that eventually, if the non-formal learning centers were going to work, they would eventually, if the government eventually was going to let's say take up a model like this, these were going to be the people that would be their coaches. And so we what we did is that they had been working as government supervisors, but we provide them with 1 day face-to-face training on coaching, 2-hour monthly coaching learning cycles, and 3 monthly, and then they had to meet for 3 hours per month with their learning facilitators. And then the model that we did to the learning facilitators, which again were community members that had not been teachers, is that they attended 6 days face-to-face training where they learned the skills for reading, to be teachers of reading, of math, and also of social emotional learning, which is new in the region, and also something on classroom management, pedagogical skills. And they also had during 9 months 3-hour on-site coaching visits. So these coaches would come, and then they would have a conversation with them, then they would observe their classes, and then they would give them feedback after the classes. And they would also attend monthly teaching learning circles for 9 months, which are this type of, we've been discussing this type of peer learning communities. So we conducted a research study to try to understand what was the effect of the accelerated learning program and the added value of coaching. And so the questions that we had is what the cost effectiveness of ALP on their literacy, numeracy, and social emotional learning outcomes. What is the added value of and the standalone effect of providing on-site coaching? And we also tried to understand how do the effects of the program vary for different subgroups, and what are the experiences of children, learning facilitators, and coaches with the program. The research design that we used a randomized controlled trial with 2 levels of randomization. First, we randomized things at the non-formal learning center level, and then because they were within each area, catchment area, there were a lot more out-of-school children that we could serve. Then we also randomized children to treatment and control groups. So at the non-formal learning center, we randomized some schools, some non-formal learning centers to receive a basic model of coaching, and another set of centers to receive also coaching. And then within each one of them, some children got into the treatment and some children got into control. We had longitudinal data for waves of data. We used a mixed method explanatory design. Basically, we had quantitative data that was always followed by qualitative data to try to provide explanations on the findings of our research. Our monitoring data was linked to research, and we also had a costing study. So this is the research design that I was just discussing. The population is basically 10.5 million out-of-school children in Nigeria. That was the target population, but for the program participants, we're only 22,000. For the research sample, we had 2,646 out-of-school children and 80 non-formal learning centers. This is the point of randomization, where we randomize some schools to receive a basic ALP program and some schools to receive the ALP plus coaching to be able to disentangle the effect of ALP and coaching. And then we also, within each one of those, we had some students receive the treatment, and some people were assigned to a weight control group. This is the treatment contrast. So what you see is that we did have a control group that they were just weight controlled, that received the intervention later on, but they didn't receive anything during the research, the time of the research study. Then we had a basic ALP where all the children received, for example, all the classes, 3-hour sessions per day, 3 times per week for 9 months on literacy, numeracy, social emotional learning, some time to play. And then their learning facilitators have received face-to-face trainings, teaching learning circles, but only some of them received coaching. So for the basic, we didn't have coaching, and for the ALP plus coaching, then we wanted to see what is the added effect and the added value of providing and the added cost of providing coaching. So these are the 3 treatment groups. These are our participants. What you can see at endline is that we did have 15.9% of attrition. We actually we actually didn't see that the attrition affected the characteristic of the sample. Instruments. We had EGMA, a battery of social emotional learning tools, basically a scenario-based tools to try to look at hostile attribution bias, the degree to which children assign hostile intent to the intentions of others, emotion attribution accuracy, the degree to which they're able to identify accurately the emotions of people, conflict resolution strategies such as aggression, disengagement, problem solving. We also had anger and sadness dysregulation, levels of depression, and we collected data on a teacher classroom observation tool. The process, as I mentioned, we had baseline quantitative, that was in May 2018, also an inline quantitative, and we had a qualitative study. Right now, we are currently analyzing data from transition outcomes, but I'm not going to present that data right now. So we had a costing study, an impact evaluation, and a qualitative study. Here are the analytic strategies, but I'm going to jump into the results. So what are the costs of the intervention? What we found is that the basic packet, which is here, so basically providing the accelerated learning program to children will cost £66 per child, but adding coaching was an additional £42 per child. So £42 per child was the cost of coaching for a total of 108 per child to provide this accelerated learning program of 9 months. Okay. What are the effects of the attending ALP? So when we try to identify the effects of the basic program and accelerated learning program, when we compare it to a control group that didn't receive anything, what we find is that the ALP helped children develop had small effects, small but statistically significant effects on 2 out of 5 reading skills. It had also small to medium effects on some numeracy skills, I think 7 out of 8. And then it actually had negative effects, which is something we want, on aggression skills. So basically reduce children's aggression. So basically the LP program is working. But then when we look at the effect of providing coaching, we find a different story, and we see actually that coaching, it costed £42 per child, but it had actually negative effects on literacy on one skill, but then a lot of negative effects on students' numeracy, and also some negative effects. It actually just mixed effects on social emotional learning. And so this was surprising to us. Basically, the basic treatment, which was less expensive, was more cost effective than the coaching. The coaching actually didn't have the effects we expected. And then we tried to understand why. We conducted some research. We conducted some research, and interestingly, most people thought that the coaching was helpful, but at the same time, they also said that basically everybody, like the learning facilitators and the coaches, everybody reported that coaches had established a friendly and respectful relationship with learning facilitators, that they understood their role as coaches was very different from their role as supervisors in the government, and so that they wouldn't come as supervisors, but just trying to improve to give them feedback and improve their learning. But however, we also found that coaches really struggled to provide effective support to learning facilitators, given that they had very limited training, and they also had a lack of expertise in subject matter areas, all of them, but especially social emotional learning. Everybody struggled a lot with social emotional learning in Nigeria. So this was something that came up a lot, that coaches were nice and they were respectful and they had good relationships, but they were really not added a lot of value. But so basically, sometimes they would come, they would observe, but the type of feedback that they were giving to the learning facilitators was not really helping them improve their skills. And so sometimes learning facilitators felt that they would come, but they were unprepared to really push them to learn more, to actually give them feedback or effective tools. So what did we conclude? We concluded that a cost of £66 per child, the basic program, is the most cost-effective option to improve the out-of-school outcomes of children in Northeast Nigeria. The provision of coaching adds 42 per child of the cost of the basic ALP. However, coaching led to negative numeracy, literacy, and social emotional learning effects. So as the more expensive intervention with negative impact, we found that there is no return on the additional investment per child. I didn't put these findings here, so I'm going to skip them. So threats to the validity. We found that the randomization, actually, perhaps I skipped those too quickly, but we found that we had looked at the balances at baseline, and we see that the randomization worked at the non-formal learning center level, but there had been inconsistent randomization at the individual level, and so that was a problem. We also find that attrition of almost 60% didn't really change the composition of the samples, and we also didn't think that there was any evidence of contamination. We thought that the results can only generalize to out-of-school children in emergency settings, but not to not to training of teachers, but of learning facilitators. As part of our next steps, we conducted some implementation research, analyzing monitoring data to identify how the quality and fidelity of the implementation moderate the effect of the intervention. And so whether high levels of coaching and low levels of quality coaching have different effects on student outcomes and on teachers' instructional practices. We also collected data in November of 2019 to track transition into formal school. So basically a year after children graduated from the non-formal learning center, we wanted to identify whether the program had successfully helped them transition. We are currently analyzing the data, but we have a very high attrition rate. And so we are we're currently analyzing, but we're also trying, we have the analysis in hold because we're trying to reach out and go back to the field and collect additional, making calls and collect additional data to see whether we can decrease attrition, because attrition was like 40%. And we refine our basic treatment and our coaching model, and we're conducting more research in the cohort 3. So one of the things that we did as specific actions based on the evidence is that we actually discontinued the coaching from the larger set of non-formal learning centers. We refined the coaching model in only a small set of non-formal learning centers, so we could continue working with some set of schools to refine the model because we had seen that it wasn't working. So we trained coaches, we provided added emphasis, we increased the amount of training that they were receiving because we really think that they didn't really have the subject matters knowledge that they need on reading, math, and especially SEL. And we also adjusted the coaching learning circles to increase to improve their knowledge of the subject matters. For program designers, we really think, as you saw in Pakistan, for example, we had seen with PRP that actually the one ingredient that is working a lot are the school support visits, which are the equivalent coaches. But one of the difference between our Pakistan model and the Nigerian model is that the coaches that we have in both, first, some group of people are working with teachers, and in this case, we're actually working with learner facilitators that haven't been teachers, but also the coaches themselves are very different. The coaches in Pakistan have a lot of training and have had a lot of time to develop and to gain the subject knowledge, pedagogical practice, and the coaching skills that they need. And so we really think it's important to ensure that coaches are competent, and this takes time, like developing those competencies and the subject matter that takes time. And so especially in areas where there's not a lot of capacity. And so we really think that in contexts where there's not a lot of available coaches that can be that can provide support to teachers, it's important to perhaps invest first in the face-to-face trainings and the facilitated learning circles to build capacity. And in later phases of the project, identify highly competent learning facilitators and provide them with further professional development opportunities so that they can later on take the role of coaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. And to the team, it's like a big team of people that contributed to the study. So I want to encourage everyone, I know people are still joining. If you have questions, please put them on the chat screen, and we will get to all of the questions after all the presenters have had a chance to present their work. So next we have from RTI, Barbara Greenwood, who will be presenting about the coaching and school-based support that's done in Malawi. Barbara, if you can share your screen.
Is it showing up?
Not yet. Sylvia, can you stop sharing? Okay. I see you, Barbara. Hi.
Hi. But I mean,
You're
you're going to have to share
screen?
your screen.
Okay. All right. I'll do that.
This is just not working. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone.
Everyone's on mute, but I'm sure they're all waving and saying hi.
I'm sure they're all waving hello to me.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello. There, I'm getting set up. I am Barbara Greenwood. I'm the Chief of Party for the Malawi Early Grade Reading Improvement Activity. I'm presenting on behalf of Martha Meava, who's having connectivity problems today. So I'm presenting on her behalf. Okay, bit of me change. The Malawi Early Grade Reading Project falls under the Malawi National Reading Program. And the main goal of the program is to improve the reading skills of standards 1 through 4 learners in Chichewa and English. We do this through 3, well, in fact 4, there's one missing, main objectives. 1, improved instruction, increased community engagement, safe and inclusive learning environment, and then also government engagement. Right now, we've done this through a variety of activities, through face-to-face trainings, through provision of reading material. But mainly for this one, we're talking about the face-to-face trainings that move into the school-based coaching, and the school-based coaching that moves into the teacher learning circles. We started this approach beginning of 2018. The face-to-face training started towards the beginning of the program. Then we realized that there needed to be additional follow-up. Just the face-to-face trainings was not enough. And within the structure of the Malawi government system, they have primary education advisors at the district level who go to the schools, who are supposed to provide some coaching and support. But what we've done is we've added school-based coaching where the section heads provide coaching to the teachers, and then there's teacher learning circles. And like I said, one of the big issues that we had with the district-based, with just the PAYAs following up, is that PAYAs are responsible for around 15 schools average. And that's not enough time for them to follow up with each teacher in their district. And also there was issues with them traveling to visit schools. Some PAYAs are visiting schools on a regular basis, some are not. At the school level, coaching is done by section heads mainly at every school. And every section head has a coaching tool. The coach and the teacher jointly select areas of focus during the lesson observations. And then they carry on into the facilitation, the discussions. Here's the structure. And as we said, with the PAYAs, like I said, they do 12 to 15 schools. So they don't have time to do individual coaching for every teacher within their school. And like I said, they also have problems of having transportation to be able to follow up. Within each school, there's an infant section head and a junior section head. And the infant section head oversees the standards 1 and 2 teachers, and the junior section head oversees the standards 3 and 4 teachers. We are aiming at standards 1 through 4, so we work directly with the section heads, the infant and junior section heads. So the school-based coaching process. There's a pre-lesson discussion between the section head and the teacher. After that, then the section head observes the lesson, takes notes. Then they have a discussion with the teacher. And then the section head submits written record to the head teacher. So there's a regular process and steps that they're supposed to follow through. Section heads are now the leading providers of National Reading Program coaching. 90% of teachers have received in-school coaching in NRP pedagogy since September 2017. In just the first half of the 18-19 school year, this is up to February 2019, 90% of observed teachers were coached at a higher percentage rate than the previous year. And 47% of observed teachers had already been coached 3 or more times. So there's a big uptake, and this is positive. Next slide. Also at the school level, we have teacher learning circles. Teacher learning circles provide a monthly forum for teachers to share experience and practice teaching at school. They're structured meetings with 10 steps. Feedback is provided by a checklist for daily practice. Some topics, the last year, most of the topics were predetermined and teachers chose others. Facilitation of TLCs is shared amongst teachers, but what we were seeing is that majority of the time, facilitation is done by section heads. STAR teachers are awarded a certificate of recognition. And we're seeing the STAR teachers being done at the school level and also at the zonal level and district level. Some government districts have taken this as part of what they have seen as good practice, so they've taken this on as their own, and they're implementing it across the entire districts. Next. Teacher experience of teacher learning circles. This is from the 2019 NARI, National Assessment for Reading Instruction. TLCs, which started in 2018, have been widely accepted. 74% of sampled schools conducted all prescribed TLCs. 53% of observed standards 1 through 4 teachers reported attending 100% of the TLCs. Nearly 2/3 of observed teachers in 2019 rated TLCs as very useful. Most other respondents rated them as useful. There was issue starting it. This was something new. They're held once a month. Teachers saw it as an extra activity. And so they were requesting extra per diems, support. The ministry came back and said, listen, this is part of the regular day. We're asking for it to happen once a month. They provided instructions right from the ministry. So it became part of the system. So it became part of the monthly calendar. Next. So the link between TLCs and school-based coaching. TLCs and coaching, they complement each other. The TLCs provide teaching practices followed up by coaching. Coaching informs the selection of STAR teachers, and topics for TLC are identified from coaching feedback. This is a work in process, this is a work in process. It doesn't happen overnight. Again, it's all about teacher behaviors and behavioral change. And what we are seeing is that some of the schools are putting the topics from their coaching into TLCs, and others are having more difficult seeing what that looks like. Overall changes in instruction. Improvements in areas of teaching practice covered by TLCs. Most teachers were on schedule in their progress through the National Reading Program curriculum for their standard and subject. Most teachers checked the learners understood the topic. This was observed. More teachers guided learners to the correct response. This was an average of 5 times a lesson in 2019 versus 3 times in 2017. More teachers had learners practice reading. 65% of teachers in 2019 had learners read more than 80% of prescribed reading time versus 51% in 2017. These are all positive trends. Some of the challenges, limitations in learning from each other where the schools have only 1 or 2 teachers. As we know in your more rural areas, your schools are small. So there were some of the issues of where to group, how to group when there's only 1 or 2 teachers. PAEAs not coaching section head. Like I said, not all PAEAs were going out on a regular basis to all the schools coaching. Section heads moving or transferring. We've seen this as an issue. Once you start training teachers or other education professionals, they get moved to other systems. Solutions: teachers join TLCs in nearby schools. We have seen some zones pair up schools for TLCs. Close monitoring and support to all PAYAs by district education management team. We have also followed up with the district education management teams, providing them information on a PAYA's coaching visits of how many times they visited within this past year. So the district education management team is able to follow up directly now and with the PAYAs and be able to figure out what support they may need to be able to do their jobs. PAYAs orienting and training new section heads on their roles. We are seeing in some zones PAYAs partnering with other PAYAs and providing larger group trainings on the roles of the section heads. So we're seeing some initiatives happening at the grassroots level to be able to figure out how to make the section heads coaching model work. Strengths of the approach. Teachers get frequent support because they are coached by section heads within their school. Teachers have time to practice and learn from each other. Most teachers welcome the approach. It's cost-effective strategy providing continuous professional development since it's done at the school level. It's based on school level data and needs. Also, within the project, we use the PAYAs. When we do face-to-face trainings, the PAYAs are within the cascade. The PAYAs are our trainers. And we also do a lot of training with the section heads and key teachers, so they know the subject matter. Switch. Pathways to sustainability. Include peer coaching as a specific function in the job description of section heads. Strengthen accountability mechanisms and monitor implementation of coaching in TLCs. Inclusion of TLCs and coaching activities in school and zonal improvement plans and budgets. Within the inclusion of TLCs and coaching activities in school and zonal improvement plans, the project, we have worked with the district education leaderships on trainings, but also on workshops where they budgeted National Reading Program activities and figured out how that fits within their budgets. And we did that right before the budget cycles. Next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. We will now move on to the third presentation. It's actually the third and final presentation of this panel. And it is by Wael Musa and Anne Smiley from FHI 360.
Thank
so
you.
Wael, if you can share your screen.
I think Barbara needs to stop sharing, or yeah.
Yes,
All right, let me know if you can see the slides.
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. All right, thank you very much, Bidemi. As you probably guessed, I will be keeping in the same theme of teacher coaching, but this time we'll be talking about in a context of education and emergencies, and actually it will be the almost exact same context as the IRC presentation, which would be in Northeast Nigeria. So to introduce myself very quickly, I'm Wael Musa, a research scientist with FHI 360, and my co-author is Annie Smiley, who's the Associate Director of Research and Evaluation, who's also here with me on the call. All right, so a quick background and context. So the study that we're gonna talk about takes place in Borno and Yobe states in Northeast Nigeria, and it's currently home to actually about 1.4 million IDPs in Borno and 125,000 IDPs in Yobe. And the more important aspect of this demographic is that more than half of them are actually children. And so the project that I'll be discussing is the USAID Addressing Education in Northeast Nigeria, or AENN activity, which is a 3-year program targeting the educational needs of 6 to 15-year-olds in Borno and Yobe. And so AENN provides basic education in terms of reading and math in the local languages of Hausa and Kanuri through their non-formal learning centers, which take place within the context of the formal schools. And so within each NFLC, or the non-formal learning centers, we typically admit 50 to 60 learners per learning facilitator. So each NFLC is associated with one learning facilitator who will act as the teacher, and about 50 to 60 children will be in attendance. And so AENN is a accelerated education program, so it uses a condensed curriculum which aligns with the formal curriculum of Nigeria, and it focuses on literacy, numeracy, and social and emotional learning skills. So the main aspect of the project that I will be studying here or investigating is the AENN school support visit and coaching model. So we've hired master trainers who visit these NFLCs once a month and through something we call a school support visit. And they basically use a classroom observation tool to measure teachers' performance, including fidelity of implementation of the program as it is designed. In addition to that, they also conduct interviews with the learning facilitators for coaching as part of the teacher professional development model. So this is where, after they've observed the classroom, the teacher and the master trainer go through a coaching session where the coach goes over what went well in the program, what didn't work well as much, and how to achieve the improvements that the coaches identify through their observation. So our research questions are basically, the top line research question is, what are the effects of coaching in a context such as Northeast Nigeria, so in education and emergencies? And so we wanted to know what the effects are on learning outcomes, as well as on social and emotional learning skills. We then also, thankfully, we have very rich data from the data that we collected through our observation tools. We were able to actually get some information on the content of the coaching. And so we could ask the question and potentially answer it: does the quality of coaching matter? In addition to that, we also wanted to see whether or not the coach's workload affected the learning and SEL outcomes of the children, of the targeted children. So the study takes place in the context of the project across 100 communities in Borno and Yobe. And so we collected data for early grade reading and math assessments, social and emotional learning outcomes, as well as lesson observations and coaching. And so the final study sample included 33 master trainers who were each assigned to about 2 or 3 communities. And so at the end, we had a final analytic sample of 196 NFLCs in 76 communities. And so the part that's more interesting to the study here is that, or more central to the study, is that out of the 196 NFLCs, 54 of them actually received 0 coaching visits. They were not reached by the coaches. And the remaining 142 received at least 1 visit. So there was variation in the number of visits actually each NFLC received. And so that's going to be part of our identification strategy for trying to estimate the effect of coaching. So we exploit the variation in the number of coaching visits available to NFLCs as a result of, so what we had were logistical challenges during the implementation phase, which led to this disproportionate number of visits by the different master trainers. And so we collected outcomes data prior to any coaching visits at baseline, and again, following the completion of all coaching visits at endline. So beginning of term, end of term. And then we employ a difference in differences estimation strategy to basically identify the effects of coaching on reading, math, and SEL outcomes. And then we disaggregate these effects by quality of coaching as well as the workload of each coach. And here we define workload as basically the number of NFLCs that each coach is responsible for. And so very quickly, I'll show the math behind all of this, but basically the idea is it follows a very standard difference in differences approach where the main parameter of interest here is gamma multiplied by post times the SSV visit, which captures the difference in differences effect of coaching. And so with this strategy, with this particular specification, we're actually able to estimate the average overall effect of coaching without any disaggregations. And so when we disaggregate the school support visit by the content of the school support visits, we include an additional term, we call it support, which takes on a value of 1 if the coach's advice at the end of the observation was actually supportive and in line with the identified areas of improvement. So here we're trying to proxy for quality of coaching if the coach provided tangible and actionable advice for the learning facilitators to follow. There were many cases where the advice that was provided was completely tangential or completely even orthogonal sometimes to the areas of improvement that they've identified. And we don't believe that to be a particularly the best strategy to move forward. And so in this case, the equation just simply disaggregates between the average coaching effect and the average coaching effect when the coaching was supportive. And so as you can see here, we have 2 terms of interest rather than just 1. And then finally, when we look at the effect of coach workload, we basically substitute the dummy variable of receiving a school support visit with the actual discrete variable of how many visits or how many NFLCs every coach was actually assigned. And so our hypothesis here follows a lot of the work that Ben Piper and his colleagues have done in terms of the coach to teacher ratio. And so here we actually want to try and test whether or not if we overload the coaches with more responsibility in terms of how many visits they have to complete, we wanted to test whether or not that could affect their performance positively or negatively. And so this would be the particular part of the equation that's relevant. So very quickly, to provide a little bit of statistics in terms of to potentially defend internal validity of our approach, given that the school support visits were not randomly assigned. We test for basically, first we test for baseline balance between the schools or the NFLCs that received any visits versus the schools that didn't. And we can see that for the most part, along the observable characteristics of the students, they were fairly similar in their basic demographics. However, the more important parts that were different were in terms of whether or not the students' first language is Hausa or Kanuri, and whether or not they were IDPs or if they were from the host community. But the thing that we found was encouraging, despite these imbalances, was that between baseline and endline, you'll see that the composition of the demographics did not actually change over time. So at least for the purposes of a difference in differences approach, it satisfies one of the big assumptions of difference in differences. And then next, we look at whether or not the number of school support visits or the number of assignments that each coach received was actually related to the observable characteristics of the students and the teachers. And for the most part, you can see here that all of the confidence intervals cross the 0 line, which means they're not statistically significant, except for one variable, which is an indicator of whether or not the students were of a low or high home literacy environment. And you'll see that on average, the NFLCs that received more visits or had a higher number of assignments actually had lower home literacy environment. So if we're worried for potential bias, we think that this bias would negatively affect our results rather than positively affect them. So in terms of results, like I said, the first specification we provide is just trying to estimate the average effect of coaching on oral reading fluency, the probability of receiving a 0 score on reading, and then the math score, hostile attribution, conflict resolution, use of problem solving, and then finally ACEs, which is a children's stories module that tries to identify emotional accuracy. And so what we find here is actually some fairly large effects, with the difference in difference effect for the school support visit being any number greater than 0 is actually an additional 6.6 words per minute. And as you can see from the left side panel of the graph, that the starting point for the treatment group was 5.6 words a minute, and they ended the year at 20 words a minute. But they ended the year with an additional level of growth of 6.6 relative to the group of schools that did not receive any coaching visits. And in terms of effect size, 6.6 words per minute was about 0.5. And then when we look at the percentage of zero scores, we can see that the treatment group actually was able to decrease the number of non-readers at a higher rate than those who did not receive any coaching visits. And then we see the same result for math, where we see positive effects of coaching. And then in terms of conflict resolution, so the percentage of times that a child would resort to problem solving to resolve conflict was actually also much higher for the coaching group relative to the non-coaching group. And lastly, we don't find any effect on emotional accuracy. So when we disaggregate this effect by whether or not the coaching was supportive or not supportive, we still find actually additional effects or incremental effects of having supportive coaching. So the first row of the coefficients you'll see here, 5.66, is the effect of coaching that was not supportive relative to no coaching at all. And then the second row is the effect of supportive coaching over and above that of not supportive. So in this particular case, the effect of coaching but not supportive is 5.6 words per minute. And the effect of supportive coaching is 7.97. So it's about 8 words per minute for the supportive coaching. So this basically tells us that at least we can provide a little bit of support to the notion that the content or the quality of the coaching that the learning facilitators are receiving actually does make a difference, and it adds value on top of the coach doing their other responsibilities. And so we can see this manifesting itself in terms of the percentage of zero scores, math scores, hostile attribution, and emotional identification or emotional accuracy. The only place we don't see this effect is in terms of conflict resolution, the percentage of time that a child would resort to problem solving. Finally, the last set of results that I'm going to show is I wanted to test the hypothesis of the coach to NFLC ratio and to see if that is significant. And so for this particular exercise, I went with a quadratic function because I wanted to see if the slope or the effect of having a higher workload changes with the number of assignments that they actually have. And so this result actually confirms it. And we find that on average, as the number of assigned NFLCs increase, the effects or the benefits of coaching increase as well, but then after a certain point, they become negative or they start to decline. And so we can see here to visualize what this looks like. So in terms of oral reading fluency, the left graph you can see here is the average oral reading fluency score conditional on the number of NFLC assigned per coach. So you can see it goes from 1 to 8. And you can see that from 1 to 4, the benefits of coaching are apparent here, and you can see it increase with the number of assignments. But then after a certain point, and in this particular case, after 4 assignments, the coach effects begins to decline. And so in this case, on the right side, you can see what I'm talking about in terms of the change in the effect. So the effect is positive and beneficial up to 4 visits for oral reading fluency. After 4 visits, the additional NFLC assignments begin to become detrimental in some ways. And so we see the same effect with the percent of zero scores, except it's the opposite because we want to lower the number of zero scores. And so here we can see that the number of assignments are beneficial up to 3 assignments, and then after 3, the assignments begin to become detrimental, or at least the benefits begin to go away. Same thing for scores, and we see that the benefits are present up to 4 visits. After 4 visits, these benefits begin to disappear. And for hostile attribution bias, we see benefits up to 3 visits. And for conflict resolution, the same thing. We see benefits up to 3 visits, and then after that, the effects start to become negative. So very quickly to just recap everything that I just mentioned is that on average, NFLCs receiving any kind of coaching did exhibit greater gains in reading, math, and use of problem-solving strategies for conflict resolution. So we hit on the majority of the objectives of the project through coaching alone. And then we also found that the NFLCs whose master trainers showed supportive coaching showed gains over and above what I'm calling normal coaching visit effects. And we found this to be true for reading, math, hostile attribution, as well as emotional accuracy. And then finally, we found that coaches' workload is a significant determinant of NFLC performance. So this means that we found that the benefits actually attenuate when coaches are assigned to more than 3 or 4 NFLCs. So the reason why this last finding is important is because it gives the program an idea of what type of workload is optimal. And so how can we maximize the effects that we can gain from our coaches? So the limitations of this, I think, are fairly apparent. One, even though the sample composition was stable between baseline and endline, we can't really say that these results are causal. One, the logistical challenges that we had that led to NFLCs not receiving any visits were obviously not random. Even though the characteristics were fairly similar between those who did and those who didn't, we can't be really sure that they were as good as random. And then finally, unless we can assume parallel pre-treatment trends in the student outcomes, which is highly doubtful, we can't really assume that these effects that we're estimating here are in fact causal. And so the external validity also is potentially doubtful. Because between baseline and endline, we did experience actually high attrition. So between baseline and endline of NFLCs, so these results might not necessarily generalize to the rest of the AENN population. Because what we found was that attrition was mostly geographic, and so most of the attrition happened in Borno and among Kanuri majority communities. But hopefully these results still shed light and provide some valuable information in terms of how important coaching can be and how it could affect different types of students and how potentially program design can be informed through this particular analysis. So our findings obviously are not causal without making certain assumptions. But however, we do think that these results are encouraging and they do indicate towards the importance of coaching in terms of trying to improve student outcomes from academic standpoint, as well as from a social and emotional learning standpoint. And so we also find support to the notion of diminishing marginal returns to coach assignments, which is in line with what Ben Piper and colleagues has found in their previous papers from Kenya and Liberia, where there might be a relationship between how many assignments each coach has and the performance of the coaches or the performance of the teachers that they coach. But what we add to that is that we actually find that the benefits are positive up until a certain point. So it's not necessary that fewer assignments are always better, but you can extract more, call them rents, from the coaching effects by doing this type of analysis and figuring out what is sort of that sweet spot in terms of how many NFLCs should we assign each coach. And what I like to think as the more important part of this study is that this really sheds light on the need for better assessments of coaching quality and data to at least capture the coach-teacher interactions beyond what we capture through our tablet-based observations. And then hopefully in the future, we could potentially run studies where we can actually randomize coaching assignments in this type of context so that we can see what the effects are, the causal effects are of the coach workload. And that is it for me. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, obviously, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Wael. As usual, we have quite a variety of papers and presentations. And I now want to invite Kimberly Smith, who is our discussant, to say a few words about, help us try to pull all of this together. That's going to be quite a task, both from the first panel and the second panel. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions from all of the participants. I see there are questions coming already in the chat. Keep them coming, and we'll get to them after Kimberly's presentation. So Kimberly, over to you.
Thank you, Badimi. This has been fabulous. And I want to commend each of you on your work in helping provide further insight of what works at what cost for supporting teachers in developing in humanitarian context. Today's session really gives us a chance to learn from a variety of contexts and reflect on the evidence we are seeing on how we can help system actors to provide quality education. We've looked at descriptive statistics today, quantitative and qualitative data. So it's been fascinating to see. Well, we know teachers are facing challenges, that's clear, and that's our task, is try to help provide that support for them in the midst of things they're facing, like large class sizes, limited training, insufficient low pay, workload, etc. We know that we are all fully aware of what they're facing. And we know that the governments are facing challenges with finite resources. How do we help them, as Wael said, find that sweet spot? What works well? And is cost effective. Well, today we've really identified and talked about and had conversation mainly about coaching, but we've also talked about 3 components of support. And I think it's important for us to consider the purpose of each element, each component of it, of teacher professional development model in terms of fit for purpose, because that makes a difference as well as we look at these and consider what to choose at what point, and how each functions in purpose for helping support teachers. We've talked about face-to-face training, which we know is a quick transmission, a transference of specific practices, usually large groups, that we all familiar with, that's helping deliver curricula or maybe helping teachers prepare teaching aids, things like that. We've also talked about teacher learning circles or peer-to-peer practice, communities of practice, which we know are long-term teacher development models. We've talked about 2. We've talked about peer coaching, which allows peers to reflect together, to chew on materials and pedagogical practices, managerial practices, and content questions, and help each other think through these things. And we've seen research demonstrate that this tends to be a cost-effective model. We've also talked about facilitated coaching today through group coaching, like an ACR, where a school coach serves as a collective coach for a group of teachers. We've also talked a lot about coaching, and we know this is another long-term teacher support for behavior change. This is an opportunity for an observer who can come in and help the teacher identify personal learning goals and reflect back to the teacher what they're seeing about teacher practices, about what they're seeing about student learning, and to give constructive feedback. And we've seen that this can be a systems actor, like FHI 360 discussed. In Javina, it talked about with RTI in Tanzania, where they're seeing very good results. It can be an external actor, one who works with a project. And so we know these latter 2 approaches are quite more novel than face-to-face, but all these, it's good for us to consider, I believe, because we need to look at we really haven't established if there are substitutive effects with these different models, because we have to consider the purpose. Each has a different purpose, different role in what we're trying to accomplish with teachers. And we're still learning about the synergistic effect of these as well. In addition, we really talked about some key ingredients of success, and it's been really great to hear from the different projects of what is working. We know we have to consider, in terms of coaching model, who the coach is. Again, is it a systems actor? Is it someone as a head teacher or supervisor? Is it an external actor? An important factor too is dosage. How many total visits or hours of coaching intervention is leading to results? And we're getting at some of that together as we look at some of these things. Workload, as Wael mentioned. What are the duties, responsibilities, not only just in terms of number of mentees, but also what other responsibilities do these coaches have? We know in the Pakistan Reading Project, they had multiple tasks and duties that competed with their coaching responsibilities. What's the coach to mentee ratio? Again, the sweet spot. We're learning a lot. 10 to 15 mentees, 4 sessions. We're learning, trying to come to understand what works at what cost in various contexts. And content. Are coaches, are they trying to encourage teachers to have excellent practices in one outcome area, multiple outcome areas? Is it literacy, numeracy, SEL? that too can affect our model and what kind of impacts we have. We know that we're shooting for increased quality teacher practices and increased student learning. How is this getting us there? So these are really questions I think we need to do to address and think about, is identifying those key practices, identifying those elements of success. What's working in these models in these different contexts? And I really appreciate how different projects we're looking at these particular pieces. We know that we also have to consider, in terms of these key ingredients of success, something that came up in our conversation today is about the maturity of the project. In fact, the comparison of PRP and what's happening in Nigeria, two completely different results in terms of coaching. One where a project had been in place for a longer period of time with coaches who had more experience, and one a shorter period of time with less experience in coaching. As Javina mentioned again, that this takes time, this teacher behavior change, teaching how to coach or helping coaches understand how to support teachers, it takes time. And obviously there's culture and language that goes into this as well, you know, in terms of opportunities for who can travel, or the composite of meeting groups, men and women together, being able to just even the considerations in these different groups, whether considering to speak out or share your opinion, if that is considered proper or something that's not quite culturally something folks are used to doing within their culture. So there's lots of things for us to consider in terms of these essential key ingredients of success. I think it's also interesting for us to look at and the indicators that we want to consider in these different components, because we're looking often at coaching behavior associated with teacher behavior associated with student learning outcomes. So it's important for us to figure out and kind of think through, as Wael noted, about coaching behavior, or how these metrics that we're looking at to inform what we're looking at in terms of quality coaching, as well as defining that and looking at what the metrics we're using for teacher behavior change or quality instruction. And we have all come to, I've done a lot of work around metrics for student learning around literacy and numeracy and SEL, but we're still learning a lot on that front as well. So I think it's interesting that our conversation today, we have looked at some of these points. And I wanted to mention that as we look at our coaching model, and as we've just discussed some of the other components of support, that may not be necessarily comparing a one-to-one or substitutive type factor. We're not really sure, but there have multiple factors depend on purpose, as well as trying to get at what are these elements, these ingredients that are leading us to success. And it's been really encouraging and exciting to hear about some of those today. So I'm sure we have some more questions now. We kind of begin to discuss more about that.
Thank you very much, Kim. I'm going to open it now for questions from participants from the field. There's some questions already in the chat, so I'm actually going to call on people if they wouldn't mind asking their questions so we can hear more voices on this call. So Tim Slade.
Hey, Bidemi. Thank you, presenters, for everything that you've shared today. It's been really exciting to see the work that you guys are doing. This question specifically for Wael. While there's a lot of sort of grappling that we've done at RTI around understanding the actual like causal chain, or like the mechanism by which we think coaching works, right? Because you know, if it's strictly accountability, then presumably the sort of supportive coaching feature wouldn't have that additive effect that you're seeing, right? On the other hand, in a lot of the contexts where we see coaching done, the amount of coaching winds up coming out to roughly 1 or maybe 2 coaching visits over the course of an entire school year for a given teacher, right? And if that's the case, it's tough to argue that the mechanism is, you know, deep lasting change in the quality of pedagogical delivery, right? And so kind of trying to make sense of what we see in the data. I loved the analysis you provided about sort of the diminishing returns to marginal visits, from 1 to 4. I think that fell off much faster than I expected it to. and I'm curious, what your guys' thinking is around, what is actually happening and what is the mechanism by which coaching is influencing student outcomes.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to take a few more questions before we get responses. Is Yilkal still on the line? You had a question?
Sorry, and let me add that Yilkal is also working in Nigeria with Jongmin and myself in the IRC project.
Ah, okay.
Yilkal, yeah. Yilkal, please go ahead with your question.
For now, I am good. I don't have any questions. But if there are any questions regarding to the IRC Nigeria program, together with Sylvia and Jongmin, we are happy to try to address them.
Okay, great. There's a question from Anjum. Is she or he still on the line? Otherwise, I'm just going to, I guess, start reading the questions.
Yeah, I'm online.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out about, different countries had a different way of, selecting coaches. And I just wanted to, because we have had experience of selecting coaches in different stages or cohorts. I just wanted to find out, now most of these coaches, are they also practicing in the classroom, or they're just teachers from colleges and other places who are just going, who have received a coaching training, and then they're going into and mentoring other teachers?
Okay, great. Thank you. Karen T, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. I was struck by an IRC presentation earlier this morning about the cost effectiveness of an FLP program in northern Nigeria and how they had negative results from the coaching program. And that contrasts with the program just presented by FHI 360, which had very positive results. And I went back to try and compare my notes on the description of the program, and they both seem to have been in rather challenging contexts. So I was wondering what could possibly explain this difference with the opposite results. And I did wonder whether it was if one program actually hired their coaches and another program worked through the ministry system. Thanks.
I mean, that would be great to discuss. The IRC, the coaches were, maybe you'll come, maybe you were going to come in and.
Yeah, so our coaches were mentor, okay, we call them sometimes mentor teachers. They are government employees working for the local education authorities. They have been working as supervisors. I know that another presentation from Nigeria, they call them school support officers, kind of. So these are the same people, government employee working for the local education authorities. They have been for many years working as supervisors. So really shifting their mentality to really work as someone who is there, who's visiting schools, having some time with learning facilitators to provide some support, technical support, was a challenge. But after some efforts, they were doing more or less close to that, but still we have, even from our IRC side, we are surprised by that finding. Now I am, for example, we are trying to do it slightly differently because the results didn't convince us much. There should be either some questions on the validity of the data or something didn't work well, because we cannot, it's difficult to explain to people why we would say that actually the coaching component had a negative effect on the students' learning outcomes in the area of literacy, numeracy, and so this is an area that needs further research actually, and we are actually doing research in a slightly different manner this time. So we will have to wait a bit and then do our research, and probably we will have actually something positive.
But let me add, though, that the qualitative data, we did find that some coaches were not conducting the visits. Some coaches were coming to the visits, but were not adding much value because they didn't have the knowledge and the skills they needed to actually improve the learning. That doesn't explain why there are negative effects. It would say perhaps that there are no effects, but you know, some learning facilitators did say that at times it's stressful. These are not teachers; these are community members that have not been teachers, and then have people that were government employees coming to do some supervision visits, but trying to do coaching, and so some of them was also stressful. So there are some hypotheses, but we do need to continue exploring. And we, you know, based on the data, on the hypotheses and the data that we found, we refined the model and we're testing again. But as I mentioned, we also discontinue coaching.
Okay, thanks both. While
I can add just to that particular question, just to provide a little bit of contrast. Obviously, I will not be able to explain the results of IRC, but from our end, we hired master trainers, or they're externally hired as coaches. And so I think they're trained specifically for a non-formal setting, whereas SSOs are system actors focused more on formal schools, potentially. So that's one difference. And I believe the length, the duration of the NFLC for ANN might be a little different as well. If that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Warel. And please, there were a couple of questions I think that were directed to you as well, so feel free to.
Yes, I got a question earlier about over what period of time did the visits occur, and over what period of time did those returns diminish? So the time frame for the ANN project is 7 months from start to finish, and so because of the way we structured the data collection schedule, the first and last months were dedicated for the reading and SEL assessments, whereas the middle 5 months were dedicated for school support visits. So each coach was could potentially make up to 5 visits per NFLC. And so it's through that period of time, but we don't actually find out sort of if it's the 3rd visit where it actually starts leading to lower results. It's more about, we find that coaches that had a much higher workload in terms of how many NFLCs they were supposed to cover each month, that had a negative effect after a certain point. We did find variation in terms of how many visits each NFLC got from the SSV, from the master trainers, but it didn't really inform us much in terms of whether that particular margin had significant effects. To answer Tim's questions, in terms of causal pathways for coaching leading to improved outcomes, one thing that I noticed when I was going through the data itself was I started noticing that some coaches, in the portion of the observation tool where they're supposed to provide specific tangible steps for the learning facilitators to follow for their next visit, for the follow-up visit, they would write almost nothing. They would basically say, good. Like that was the only input they had for all of their visits, which made me start thinking that potentially that the quality of the interaction the coaching is having with the teacher is not necessarily how we designed it, or not necessarily the type of interaction we envisioned at first. And so when we started looking through all of the inputs that the coaches had, we started noticing there was a pattern. There were some coaches that were providing very specific steps, whereas others were kind of vague, or were just saying things like, it didn't go well, and that's the end of that interaction. So that's our main proxy for that. Obviously, it's not ideal, but it was a starting point for us to start looking into that particular dimension. Now, in terms of the diminishing marginal returns falling off pretty quickly, I will have to admit that that is a very non-opaque black box in terms of we don't really know the mechanisms exactly behind why things start to diminish. Theoretically, it could possibly be due to just a very challenging environment in Northeast Nigeria with a lot of challenges. Just simply getting to the NFLC can be a difficult task in and of its own. And so when we had the assignments, we noticed that there were assignments that certain coaches would only have to go to 4 or 3 NFLCs, where others had to go up to 8 or 9 NFLCs. And so basically their workload was kind of double those with the lower workload. And so that could potentially be another thing, is that could relate to the quality of the coaching as well. And so for that, I will say I don't have a very good answer other than we need to investigate this more, and we need better tools to see exactly what's happening in that particular interaction.
Thanks, Wael. Do we have other questions? Anyone else who wants to ask a question? Amy Jo? Okay, there's some questions about whether the presentations or the recordings will be made available. And we are recording the session, and we'll make that available through CIES, through the CIES website. Let's see. There was a question about whether coaches receive a top-up or other monetary incentives to provide the coaching. Any one of our presenters can jump in on that.
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Whether coaches receive any financial incentive, a monetary incentive or top-ups to do the coaching.
From Tanzania, oh, sorry.
Sorry, from the IRC Northeast Nigeria, yes, we pay them some transport allowance.
From Tanzania, we were paying to fuel the motorbikes, but then the government has taken over, so we don't do anything from topping up. And we are not paying the stipend or anything. It was just for fueling the motorbikes, which is the government has taken over now.
Okay.
In Malawi, this is
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay. In Malawi, we do not pay any stipend. At the school levels, what we have found is that some PTAs provide maybe lunch if there's for the TLCs, if they're going for extra length and stuff. But that's it. The support would be within the school's budget at the local level.
Zulfikar, did you want to come in?
Yes, sorry. At PRP, basically, we don't provide any kind of incentive for them in kind of cash or something. It's basically, as other colleagues have mentioned, it's basically only the transportation cost that they usually incur for moving from from their own school to other schools. So these costs is just provided with them, and it's a fixed cost. It's not different for different regions. It's just a fixed cost. Whether you have to travel 10 miles or 20 miles, they get the same rate. It's unfortunate, but it's the it's the practice we are basically doing here.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a general question about the issue of sustainability. It's kind of tied to the funding question, but I don't think it's sustainability is just about the funding. And I was wondering if the various speakers could talk around, under what conditions they think the work that they're doing can be sustained, what aspects of it they think the governments or schools or districts are more likely to keep going. And I was also interested in the difference between sort of formal and non-formal settings. Is the idea for non-formal settings that the government, after the end of these projects, would be able to continue with non-formal settings, education in non-formal setting in the same way as they do in formal schooling? So for, I think, Northern Nigeria is the idea that the coaching and the education in the non-formal settings will be sustained by the government. So feel free to answer, anyone.
For Tusome Pamoja, I think it's sustained in terms of using the government structures that are existing. So the government is already implementing, and they have it's incorporated within the structure itself. So to us, it's already sustained. I mean, it's going to be continuing. And most of the things that are happening within the school. The only external person who comes is the ward education officer, who is the supervisor of those schools anyway. So the head teacher and the academic teachers are from the schools, and they are doing the coaching within their schools.
Okay.
So yeah,
Great.
that's how to talk about it.
Wael, how about in your situation?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, I was asking about the potential for the coaching being sustained in a non-formal setting in